Hello, folks. Welcome to Comic-Con. I'm JD Lombardi. I have a YouTube channel. It's no ads, free, no advertisements. Do it for fun. I'm a sixth grade science teacher down in Glendale, right outside of Los Angeles. And my partner here, Gary, is a professional writer who corrects my mistakes. And he co-produces and even directs me in these little videos. And so he's along for the ride. Howdy. And Guadalupe De La O is also another science teacher at a different school, different district, who's a STEM, actually you can do better.
Yes.
You're a STEM expert.
I teach STEM and biology in South Central Los Angeles. Thank you.
And Justin is a sarcastic bastard, I believe. No, Justin, say what you do. He has a podcast?
Yeah, mental exhaustion. I'm pretty much just like doing pop culture things and talking about that. It's my first time up here, and I'm loving it already.
And one thing we want to say is, like, you know, when you think of propaganda, what do you think of? Does everyone have an image of just propaganda? Forget what's up here. Just something to think about.
Triumph of the will.
What's that?
Triumph of the will.
All right. Yeah. I mean, call it out if you know.
Yeah. If you have any examples, call it out right now.
Totally, because
We don't want to color you before we get started.
Fox News or
No, pop culture, not the Michael Moore Fox News stuff.
Andre the Giant.
What? How is Andre propaganda?
Obey.
The Obey.
Yeah, they use his image, not him as a person.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shepard Fairey's ski.
Okay.
Turn it into a whole brand.
Guerrilla marketing.
Andre's dead in my heart, so you can't. Hulk Hogan may be propaganda, but I
So,
American hero.
Huh?
You mentioned Triumph of the Will, and this Alexander Nevsky is like the anti-German, like we must resist the Teutonic.
Oh, wow. Well, Gary here found a fantastic definition from this book called Propaganda and Persuasion. Now, I'm not going to read every slide. I hate presenters do that. But this slide is worth saying.
read it.
The deliberate and systematic attempt to shape perceptions, manipulate cognitions, and direct behavior to achieve a response that furthers the desired intent of the propagandist. And I was like, wow. I mean, there's not a better definition. But we broke this into three sections. And the first section is using pop culture. I'm assuming we're all pop culture geeks here. And I mean, in a positive way, of course.
Way to insult your audience, buddy.
And our first thing is, like, you know, we know a lot of characters, and mostly are villains, but not all. Some of them are heroes that are propagandists. And so we threw together a few examples. Hail Hydra, of course. He's got the shirt. Magneto, and even in that last movie, not so great, I don't think, the Dark Phoenix one, but even...
Spoiler alert.
Even, not really. Even Professor X had a little bit of his own propaganda, you could argue. So it's interesting, the whole X-Men thing, there's a lot going on there. Lex Luthor, I like how both of these are considered villains, but, you know, you could say Lex Luthor's more to the right and Bane is more to the left, but they both have, you know, destructive means of getting their way.
Lex would definitely have a show on Fox News, buddy.
I love the cover of this book, of this comic that you know, it's obviously referring to something else. And then Kingpin, of course, in many manifestations of Kingpin, but the last one, he did such a great job in the Netflix show. Mysterio in the last one, this is a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm sorry, but I think anyone's at Comic-Con saw the last Spider-Man. You had to see it by now. But, you know, everything that Mysterio does, which was a little bit different from the books. And guys, feel free to chime in at any time. I'm just guiding them. You're doing such a great job, though.
No, all right, we're trying to learn about propaganda here.
Palpatine, of course, not so much in the classic trilogy that a lot of us grew up with, but in the prequels, his whole rise to power, and you can see some of that. And then a lot of it in the expanded universe, you see like posters of the Empire that are obviously inspired by Nazi Germany. Like, there's a whole geeky thing going on with Palpatine and the Empire. And then Harry Potter fans, of course, Voldemort and the whole, like, you have to be pure wizard ancestry and all that. The Punisher, seen as a hero, but he has his own ways of doing things. Of course, J. Jonah Jameson. Good to see the spoiler. Should I say that? No? No?
I haven't
Spider-Man.
seen, I haven't seen Spider-Man. No, yeah, he's perfect. We're going to get into that.
Killmonger and Diana's mom, Wonder Woman's mom, the Queen. She's, you know, kind of feeds all these stories to Wonder Woman, saying like, no, you know, stay away from men. I mean, and you could say
Rightfully so. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's man as in humans, but also the male gender, you could argue as well. I mean, Killmonger is such a great villain. I think a lot of us would agree that like he makes a lot of sense, and maybe we're falling for his own propaganda. But you're like,
He won me over.
he's a more believable villain, I feel. Okay, so the first question I'm going to pose to the panel is, philosophically speaking, why do these characters work? What is it about them that makes it believable and conceivable? I'll start. I think the big thing is being believable. Like, is it feasible? Like Lex Luthor, for example, would totally work, is working now among certain rich folks, let's just say, that have a lot of power in the media, let's say. And so I just think
there's people in our world that don't want aliens to come into our space?
Hey, someone wants a space force, so,
Everyone wants to find the aliens right now, just so you know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Right?
We're gonna raid Area 51 later, right?
So I don't know. For me, it just is it feasible? Like Skeletor, I love old He-Man as a kid, but Skeletor really is so ridiculous. That's why we like it, but it's not realistic. So if it's realistic, like Kingpin or someone, I think that's what makes it believable. And
For
good.
me, my favorite propagandist is Palpatine. I think a lot of people hate on episode 1, The Phantom Menace, one of the greatest movies of all time. But what's going on there, besides the bad CGI and the Jar Jar Binks, is that a real power play and a real rise of power of Palpatine. And like what he's proposing is like, this galaxy is a mess. There needs to be someone that comes in and basically gets everyone on the right. You got trade wars, trade federations. The Jedi are this weird quasi-military force that are working for their own good. Mm-hmm. And Palpatine's like, they have it wrong, you have it wrong. I can be the best senator in the world. And then by the time we get to the new trilogy, he gets rid of the Senate because he's like, I don't need you anymore.
I am the Senate.
I think I would probably fall for Palpatine's spiel if I was in the Outer Rim.
Yeah, I mean, the Old Republic was a theocracy, and we poo-poo on theocracies in the Middle East, but like that's kind of what the Jedi are. I mean, they're not covering their women and stuff, but still, it's like,
yeah, you can't have feelings, you can't fall in love.
That's what the Royal Guard are. It's just straight up, it's their thing. No one get that. That's fine.
I'll get the rest.
No, not at all.
What about you, Libby? What
I mean, just to expand on that is that inner struggle that we all have between the dark side and the light side. And so we all want to relate to something. We all want to be a part of something. And so there's always going to be somebody that's going to rally around, especially if you feel unheard or underrepresented.
Exactly.
So you're looking for a voice, and whoever that voice comes through, good or bad, is who you're going to follow.
Who would you follow, Justin? Kingpin?
No, I like Magneto a lot. Magneto was right, by the way. From both sides. Like, he's like justified in all his ways. It's always like a binary between good and evil, and that's how we kind of put ourselves in this situation, considering the political climate we're in right now. So like, it's all about finding that middle ground, but he's very like.
Well, you guys are gonna go to another topic, but like going back to the Jedi and stuff, like going into the expanded universe in Star Wars, the Jedi used to have like both.
Are we talking canon or non-canon here, buddy?
It's canon.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. But the Jedi and the Sith used to be like one. They're like a duality. They used to be together, but then they split. And because they have like they're split, it's like part of like the human condition. They just if you're part of one and then you deny the other, they're like denying the full spectrum of the humanity. And
You bring up a good point there.
Yes. And the X-Men are the same way. It's like if you think about Magneto and Xavier, the way the movies portrayed it, it's like they were once friends and like
split up over.
Yeah, their school of thoughts literally split into two, the Brotherhood and what became the X-Men. So you're right with the Sith and the Jedi as well.
Yeah, it's a schism.
Yeah, exactly. Just like
it's like not conducive to balance it. That's what generates conflict with the separation.
And this happens in the real world all the time. And that actually takes us to section 2, which is like what's behind the scenes of propaganda. Like, most of us are somewhat educated, like, I see what they're doing there. So we gave a few examples. I know when I posed the question first, like, what do you think of propaganda? For whatever reason, I think of World War II from both sides, from Nazi Germany side, but also I didn't even give that example. I gave the example of our own country, what we were doing. And so the Rosie the Riveter, which by the way, I thought it was interesting in our research, I kind of forgot that the first woman, the We Can Do It, is not Rosie the Riveter. It's actually the second woman in the middle. And so like those three were targeted for women specifically to be like, send your man off to war to possibly die, but we need your help down here. And then I love that's obviously new Captain America, but it was in the vein of the old propaganda posters. And I think of Captain America, my geeky mind goes to Captain America. Like he was literally created as a propaganda character. I'm surprised he's still around, but what they did in the movies is awesome. I love the modern Captain America is more believable, makes sense.
And what we talked about earlier was that the war wasn't popular at the time, so it's like, how do you get the fathers on board with the war that we're doing? And JD was like, dude, if a kid's reading a comic book about Captain America and then they go to their dad's like, what are we doing about these Nazis? Why are we doing about, like, it's a pressure situation in the home front where it's like your kid's saying, Dad, we're standing on the side and evil's triumphing, Captain America wouldn't want us to do that. And that little bit helps, and I think that's what Marvel was doing back in those days. It's propaganda, but it was for...
infiltrate the children, the young minds.
Exactly.
And even though we're on the right side of the war, still, I mean, propaganda is propaganda. You can't deny it. You want to speak to Civil War here?
Oh yeah, as we got into the 80s, we noticed like the whole Reagan era, the Cold War stuff coming to a head with the superpowers. Watchmen was one of the best examples of what happens when America gets too big for its britches. And Alan Moore like really knocked us down a peg with that.
Who's a
whole
Brit?
story. Yeah, I mean,
Hilarious.
who better to look into America and see our flaws than someone from another country and that's living in America? And of course, Civil War, by the time we got to the Bush era and the Patriot Act stuff, it's like they told a great story that the movie really didn't mirror as well, but the rights of superheroes and who should be unmasked and who should register, that stuff was great. So we saw our own politics coming more into focus in the 80s and 90s and in 2000 as it became more politically charged, exactly.
Yeah. And this, it's funny, we put these two on a slide, but like Hunger Games is pretty obvious. It's I don't know, reality TV, and they didn't really touch upon social media, a little bit, I guess, but it's that whole world of reality just going awry and how an Orwellian type government can use that to their advantage. And so I thought it was an interesting exploration.
It's a very pro wrestling, speaking of Andre Giant, a very pro wrestling way of manipulating people. Here's the good people you cheer, here's the bad guys, the heels that you boo, and you manipulate a whole underclass into cheering for a love story that doesn't really exist.
I was thinking about Hunger Games a little more when we were on the way here, and thinking about exit propaganda was for the people.
Do you think about Hunger Games a lot in your spare time?
Yeah, I'm hungry a lot. Is that what it's about? But Hunger Games is more about the propaganda given to the people inside the Capitol as opposed to people outside the Capitol.
No, it's inside the Capitol, outside the Capitol as well.
Yeah, no, but they don't. They know they're able to go into the game more than anything. But to keep the people quelled, to not really care about the people on the outside, the Capitol citizens just like love watching the games, like just for being what it is.
That's another way, yeah.
I put Bayformers because I didn't want to be confused with our childhood love of Transformers. These are specifically the Michael Bay movies where he, in case one doesn't know, he leans right, and so there's a very, again, I think it's obvious, but it's a very over-the-top, like, pro-America, but also the soldier. Listen to the gut. I don't know how you could better explore it.
It's if you watch the Transformers movies, the Bad Boy movies, even the Benghazi movie, it's all about inept government being circumvented by real American heroes who know what to do in the field, as opposed to this bureaucracy. And it works for the Transformer movies, I think.
And then these are two very obvious ones, but we can't not talk about them. Avatar, of course, being global expansionism and unregulated capitalism versus cultural preservation, environmentalism. I mean, a lot of people were making this parallel in the real world with the pipeline up in was it North Dakota, I think it was. That whole thing was like, people were making that example with that parallel with Avatar. And Jurassic Park, oh my God, that quote is like, it's used so much.
Read the quote, because I can't say it.
There you go. Your scientists were so preoccupied with, I can't do his voice, that they couldn't, they didn't stop to, did we do a typo with whether, they could to stop whether they think they should. And like, you hear that a lot, that comes up a lot. I listen to a lot of science podcasts and DeGrasse Tyson and all them, and they're like, this always comes up a lot. Because it's like, even though it's impossible, the DNA is far too old and damaged to bring dinosaurs back to life. Just the idea of just playing God and doing something. Woolly mammoth is possible.
They've already brought back plants, so it can be done.
Just no dinosaurs, sorry. Good chicken. So another question about, these are all clear-cut examples of storytellers using their medium, and But what about now? How is propaganda, like some of the stuff is obvious, but we're a little concerned. Propaganda itself has evolved. It's not the same as World War II era. It's very much sophisticated in some ways. Some cases it's the same old crap, for sure. But so we were talking and thinking about it, and we want to use at least one pop culture example that a lot of people are talking about, and it's Captain Marvel. I'll let you speak to this.
What's the first one we discussed on that?
Well, we're all, just to be clear, we're all on board with, female empowerment, push diversity, absolutely. I mean, even we're talking about like biology is a great example for our politics and everything we do in life. That diverse gene pool is the best for a solid, sound biosystem. And I think that translates into our cultural world and political realm. So it's great, but like it's guys, it's Disney, it's Mickey Mouse doing this after all. And so we're a little skeptical on what is their angle, because if you're a true comic nerd, Captain Marvel doesn't quite make sense into there's a force fitting.
When I was growing up, Rogue was Captain Marvel pretty much. It's like her character had been basically tossed away and her power was given to Rogue. So I had to go back and dig in the crates and actually find out who Captain Marvel was as a character, and she wasn't much there. But as we moved into the MCU and we all knew the movie was coming out, a big thing was you saw her push to the forefront of Civil War II, and Civil War II wasn't that good of a book as Civil War I, not because of Captain Marvel. I think it was just the writing wasn't there. But it's like you knew the mandate from corporate was make her work, fit her into this universe, and make her our Supergirl because this movie's coming out. And the thing we've been thinking about is like, is that right when you have somebody like a Storm, someone like a Black Widow, stronger characters than Miss Marvel, and they were kind of leapfrog over it in favor of Miss Marvel, and Lupe brought up a good point. It's like, well, Gary, look at the way Miss Marvel looks. She looks like Supergirl. She looks like Barbie. And you can speak more to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he mentioned the older characters, but I think it's even some of the newer characters that have been pushed out, like we talked about Shuri, right? Who, to me, if we're really going to embrace diversity and challenge, and maybe I'm biased as a science nerd, but that's somebody that I would love to see be like the head hero in here. So I think that just speaks to, I'm like he said, I'm excited that we have women at the forefront, but we're still going with the traditional model that we've been pushing for years.
Yeah, when it comes to Captain Marvel, I always refer to her as like the Instagram model of all superheroes.
You said she's the what?
The Instagram model of all superheroes, She is beautiful on the outside and everything. She never fails, never gets anything wrong. Sometimes she got a lot of hits in on Thanos inside of the latest movie, and she only got put down once in a sense. But like with me, with strong female characters, like she would struggle a lot more. And that seems not be what's happening with her comics and her like rise to fame. And we all know it's a corporate push to push her where she is, because the majority of all of the cool female characters were bought up by like Marvel and Sony. I mean, Fox and Sony are off. Yeah.
So I mean, our example is not to just talk about this. It was more about like, is it? We're not saying it is, but is it some sort of sophisticated, more subversive type of propaganda? I don't know. But we just want to have one recent pop culture example.
And I think if you how many people by a show of hand think Captain Marvel, keep calling Miss Marvel, old school, think Captain Marvel is propaganda?
Yeah, one person.
One person, and that's the thing, that the whole point of this is like, have we gotten to a point in our society where it's like, it's so subversive and so under the radar that we're not even seeing it's not Captain America anymore. It's something different. And we're like, well, she's standing for something we believe in and is good, so how can it be propaganda? Where it's like Captain America stood for something good and proper too, but he just had a big American thing on it. It was over. So I think that what we want to touch on is that you have to stay woke to the fact that we're not as smart as we think, and we are being fooled a lot of times with these characters.
Oh, Matt, you want to say something?
I just want to say, in terms of is Captain Marvel propaganda, I haven't read a lot of the recent comics, so I can't really speak to that. But that movie was basically bought and paid for by the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah. It's Top Gun.
It's Top Gun. Of course it's propaganda.
Yeah, no one raised their hands because, no one. We don't see that. It's like it's so under the radar. It's like unless you really look deep into it.
But I didn't raise my hand because I was wondering if it was a serious question, because to me it was obviously propaganda. Most cinematic stuff that Disney puts out is propaganda, and there's always something. And so that, I think maybe we were just thinking for a minute, but I just want to put that as a possibility because, I mean, I think you guys made your point already, and yeah, I don't think there's a lot of disagreement with what you said.
Yeah, and so this is just like one example in popular arts and pop culture, which is more obvious. I think what's scarier, because we're totally turning a corner? Yeah, turning a corner right now with mainly YouTube, but social media and news sites as a whole. I know MSNBC is far left. I know Fox is far right. I'm not even talking about those guys. I'm not like some nerd in his basement just creating a news site. From that to Macedonian teenagers totally fabricating a site from Macedonia. Most people have to look on the map where that's at. And are just getting money for clickbait. And those are relatively harmless, but I've focused on 3 examples that is harming. And we see it, at least Lupe and I see it as teachers.
With our students, yeah.
The Russian troll thing, and whether they're Macedonian or Russian, it's just this idea of other nations trying to, I mean, we're not fighting traditional wars that much anymore, so you have to be creative. And so, obviously the presidential election, no matter where you are politically, the Mueller report stated like, well, we don't know how much Trump was blah, 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 but Russia definitely was. We have evidence of Russia being involved in hacking our election. Like, that's horrible. That should not be
But it was
happening.
like, even that itself is fake news. Was it hacking our election, or was it just trying to...
Influence?
Hacking is a strong word.
You're right. I wouldn't say hacking, just because we're already a polarized nation, and there was things that were designed, that were divisive to polarize us even more.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then the conspiracy theories, especially as, I mean, she's in high school, so she sees it more. I'm 6th grade, so they're like just starting to like notice this stuff. But high school is when really they're believing this stuff. You'd be sad about our future in humanity, but they're teenagers, so you hope they come out of it. You know, we do our best as teachers to steer them in the right direction.
He did a video on Flat Earth, and when we were researching
We did a video. You're just as guilty.
Yeah. And the reason it came up was that NBA player, it was 2 NBA players.
Kyrie Irving.
Oh, you know better. You probably follow him.
Yeah.
But he basically came up with a strong statement saying, look, you guys need to look into it because I think what we've been taught in school is wrong. And it's like, yeah, look into it and realize the earth is round, buddy. But it became such a big viral moment where it almost felt cool to say the earth was flat. And I think half these people were like kind of joking, but it's like, if Kyrie's saying it, and if this other person's saying it, who was the rapper that said it?
I don't know.
It became like, it became kind of cool for a second to say the earth was flat. So I'm like, JD, we gotta talk about this. He's like, I don't think it's big. No one cares about it. I'm like, people are talking about it. You need to get ahead of this monster.
I just saw it as an excuse to teach, you know, basic geometry, like, you know, Aristophanes and these early Greek. They weren't even called scientists back then, but philosophers that figured out the earth was round thousands of years ago. So I just saw it as a good excuse to kind of put it out there. And like, it's just basically me arguing with a puppet, you know. The puppet is like the least.
That's the story of your life.
But even then, there's so much public fear around math, which is a whole other thing we could get into, that, you know, there was mathematical evidence to support the flat earth. And so people are looking at this already, you know, we live in a country that's not scientifically or math literate. We're way behind the rest of the world. And so when they see math that supports this, then people think that that's evidence or that's sufficient enough.
And then in 2 days will be the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And there are more moon landing deniers than ever before. And it boggles my mind. But this is, I mean, you know what, we're talking about Captain Marvel and pop culture. I didn't put it in here, but let's just say documentaries. That's considered nonfiction. Come on. Every single documentary, even if you agree with it, there's stretching of truths, there's half-truths. I mean, oh my God, the agenda is there. And it's so believable. Cue the
Discovery's
music.
mermaid documentary a few years ago just ruined my students, like, forever. They still think, even Discovery, who, you know, we're supposed to trust as a science resource, made a whole documentary on mermaid. It was sort of like a fake documentary, but our students couldn't tell the difference.
A mockumentary like The
Office.
Office?
That's what you call it.
I didn't know about this.
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
Our next video will be mermaids.
Scene at like the very beginning of the documentary that said this is completely
Oh.
completely accurate. They did one with Megalodon too. That
But-
they put in more indications.
In the world of,
Right.
but in the world of YouTube and social media, it's all about clips and snippets. You're not.
Yeah, they're gonna.
I didn't even know about it. Was the mermaid black or white?
Ooh, yes,
Also something exaggerated on social media,
Why are those the only two options?
right? Yeah, why can't it be brown? And then, of course,
Why can't the mermaid be a man?
it's a merman.
It's a merman.
And something
Yeah,
that
mermaid
really,
ones.
something that really grinds our gears as educators, the pseudoscience. And I just put 3 examples. The 3 hot topics is climate change, GMOs, and vaccinations. And so the question I pose to us for our final section is it more. The top part is more for the YouTuber. If it's just an individual or a couple of people, what are they trying to push? Including myself in my own video, but I can tell you right now, I'm just throwing out science education, and I encourage my students to look it up themselves, all that fun stuff. But still,
No. Be honest. What's your agenda with this channel? If you had
to spread science literacy. That's exactly it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get the last few slides. Please don't go if you feel like you're leaving, because the last few slides, especially if you're an educator or a librarian, is really driving like. We're not going to leave you hanging like, hey, world sucks, propaganda, hey, bye. There are tactics of what to do and how, and even if you're not a teacher or librarian, if you're a parent, or you have a niece or nephew you really love, and you see them, there's things that we can do.
Or a parent.
So, yeah. So the bottom one is more the corporate mandate. That's more of the big blockbuster movies and big publishers of books and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess it's not really, it's more of a rhetorical question.
How many educators do we have in the room, just out of curiosity? A couple.
Only a few teachers?
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. unlike you, Captain Marvel. I think with the big question is, I'm going through this right now. I just got some script notes yesterday morning where it was totally kind of on topic. It was saying, we see the direction you want to take this character, but our investors expect you to put, I'm gonna be real, a white male into this lead role because we already got the actor that's gonna basically make this a blockbuster movie scheduled to star in. And if you change race at this point, I don't know if that person you're thinking of can draw the box office into this story. And I'm sitting there like, is this a real note? We're not talking about story structure or the love story. We're talking about, please don't make this person biracial because it could hurt our back end.
Wow.
And so it's like, the question is like, do you push your own, because my agenda is to tell a good story that's about somebody coming of age in a different time and being different. Their agenda is, of course, make money and get their return on investment. So it's like, when you work for Marvel or DC or any type of pop culture like we were talking about earlier, do you take the money and run, or do you stand up and fight for what you believe in? In my case, the thing I sent in this morning was me saying, I'm sticking to my guns. Hey, do what you want to do. And this is the character that you're going to get. But I already got paid, so. But like, if you're in a spot where you're worrying on this paycheck coming in, if you haven't been paid yet, like, if you get, okay, we need you to do this Killmonger story, but we want to change this and that about Killmonger and kind of soften them up so we do our own Killmonger movie that's less radical. Do you, as J.D. Lombardi, do that Killmonger story, or do you stick to the roots that makes you like that character, that Michael J.
You stick to the roots, of course. You know,
But
if you dilute it, you're going to lose your fan base. You'll get new fans, but new fans of what? A crappier version of the original. It's just like.
Yeah, but I think it's hard when you're in a bind and you want to stay with that company and
No, it's tricky. I can see that.
You work for Disney, so you know how it is.
I did before teaching 3.5 years, and I was on the consumer product side, and so I got to see it from that, not so much the media, but from making toys and stuff. I worked on baby toys. All other story.
See, and the full
Baby
circle
Einstein.
is he does these videos to make up for the poison in the kid's mind when we work for Disney. That's what I was getting at earlier. You see how it all came together?
That'll hit
Offset my Catholic guilt.
Exactly.
So the third part, and we feel this is the most important, is discerning facts from alternative facts. And so it's like, how can we, especially our children, better utilize critical thinking skills to find truth among a sea of misinformation? So In my research for this, this study came up like 3 times. It's a fairly big study. It was over 8,000 participants out of Stanford University, 2016. This is scary numbers, guys. Students, middle to college. So we're talking about young adults as well, not just little kids. They didn't bother with elementary because they believe in Santa and Tooth Fairy and stuff, so it doesn't count. So from like middle school, which is where I start, all the way through college, are duped by fake news more than your older adults, I guess you can say. So 80% could not discern ads made to look like news stories versus the real deal, while 40% believed the headline of a picture of deformed flowers, this is the actual picture that was used in the study, was solid evidence of the toxicity near Fukushima. And this is what's really happening, is that you're getting half-truths. So this photograph was in Japan. They are deformed flowers. It's not Photoshop, but has nothing to do with radioactivity, has nothing to do with Fukushima. And so I think that's what we're getting bombarded, especially our children. It's just this like, there's some truth, but it's this melodramatic soap opera, I don't know, spell was cast upon it. And it just turns into this whole thing itself. And anyone who wants to geek out, I have that small link in the bottom if you want to take a picture of, I think it's a full summary of the study or something like that, like the abstract of the study.
Especially those of you who are teachers, it's a pretty
There's
good
only
one.
like 2 of
You
them,
can perform it with your own students, and it has exemplars as well, exemplar responses.
Yeah, yeah. So now that we understand how our children are being, including college kids, are being duped more than most of us, part of it is where to look. The simple thing we can do, like, okay, there's certain places we can trust to fact check. One of them, some of you heard of Snopes.com is a big one. Factcheck.org is used more in the education world. News.la also is big in the education world. And then Google Scholar, I notice a lot of people don't know about, and he always makes fun of me because I put it in my videos like all the time.
Every single video.
Because I'm like, if you want to look up anything in academia, I mean anything, not just science, it's in through Google Scholar, because only published peer-reviewed studies are there. If it's not, like, you're not going to find anything bad about GMOs in a published journal. It doesn't exist. It's all hoopla made up. It's just fear of the unknown. Now, is it possible? Sure, it could be, but the studies are not there. The data is not there. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, what if someone hijacks Google or Snopes? And that's a possibility. As of now, these are solid standards. But that's a fear I have. What if the wrong government gets the wrong amount of power, the wrong things just snowball, and someone owns Google, let's say? These may not be reliable anymore. I don't know. But as of now, this is like a good place to go. Even law, like anything in academia, it doesn't have to be science. Google Scholar is fantastic. That's why I keep showing it for the videos, even though my kids are not using it. But older kids and us adults can check it out.
Do your kids use Google Scholar?
We
High school,
encourage
yeah.
them to. But they don't know about it either, unless we tell them.
It's basically a super filter. It's not just like, oh my God, if you type anything in Google, oh my God, you know what you'll get. But if you put it through the filter of Google Scholar, it's only going to be peer-reviewed studies. And it's like, oh my God, when I discovered it from a professor, I was like, oh my God. So that's great of like what to do. But, and I this is it's not a picture, this is a little video. So here's an example of me talking about Google Scholar. It's only like 30 seconds.
Facts are facts. There are no alternatives. Remember, Jimbo, it's all about sources. 1, be skeptical. Just because somebody says it doesn't make it true. 2, who's saying it? Make sure what you're reading or watching is from a reputable source. 3, verify. Independent verification can confirm whether something is factual. Make sure it was originally published in a professional journal. You can verify this with Google Scholar. Certain facts can also be verified on Snopes.com. You getting all this, Jimbo?
And he's sleeping. So that's great of like you point him in the right direction, but we know that's not enough, especially as educators. So it's better to teach them how than to teach them what to look up. So I kind of touched upon that with saying like, the first 2 steps, and I kind of kept it short. You can expand on that. And again, I don't want to read again from a slide, but this is a good one. This is straight from the nextgenscience.org. It was called, this is for the new standards. Actually, once you start, because you started, those who don't know, it depends on what state you live in. You can kind of see the map there. The blue states have adopted what's called the Next Generation Science Standards, or NGSS, and it's totally flipped in a good way. It's not just, here's a bunch of facts. The sun is 93 million miles away, remember that. And we're moving to a place where it's not about being a walking encyclopedia or Wikipedia. It's about what do you do with that information? How do you think critically? How do you problem solve? And NGSS is going in that direction. So I'm starting full-fledged this coming school year. I did it half so last year. You started?
Yeah, we've been implementing it for a while, for a few years, about 3-4 years. So like you said, it's a focus on depth versus breadth. How many of you are native to California? Most of you. So you might remember the old CST test where you just, bubbled in multiple choice answers. And so not only have the standards changed, but also the assessment that students are expected to take is very high leverage. So it involves critical thinking, data analysis, being able to write an argument. So all of these skills, it's more of a focus on skills coupled with the content. To help students be more successful in being able to discern between what's good and what's bad.
And so in this quote here, what they pull, it's like, even if you're like, I'm here for propaganda, I don't care about science or education, it's beyond that. And so excuse me, I'll try to be dramatic in reading it. Scientific education is central to the lives of all Americans, all people, really, but this is for, standards for America.
Propaganda for America.
It is, it really is, but it's a great one to have. The standards are written for all students, all standards, all students is like the main push for NGSS.
Never before has our world been so complex, and scientific literacy is critical to making sense of it all. Science is also at the heart of innovating, leading, and creating jobs for the future. That's why all students, regardless of whether they pursue college or STEM careers, should have access to high-quality K-12 science education. And it's basically just being better informed citizens. If you're voting, you need to know what real academia is doing, not what politicians are saying. I want to get my science from a scientist, not from a politician. It's just...
And if you look at the history of the standards, there tends to be like a pendulum swing in the way science is taught. So like we brought up the moon landing. During that time, there was a big focus in school curriculum to be about inquiry and students discovering. And then the 80s came along, and then, politicians flipped, and then there was this focus on memorization and facts. And then now we're at this upswing, especially with this technological revolution we're having, where we're getting students to think critically again.
Yeah, so there's some good news with that. And also just science and engineering practices, it forces students to ask questions, analyze and interpret data, engage in a thoughtful argument, not just name calling and trolling online, and obtaining value and communicating information. And that's where the standards are going. So that's a good thing. Not all states are on board.
This guy practices what he preaches. He has a couple of trolls on his YouTube channel, and instead of saying, "You suck too," he'll go in there and he'll basically break down and show facts and like, this is why I believe this is why I put this in the video, this and that. And what do?
They disappear. Every time they disappear. One guy kept going back and forth. But as long as they're respectful and not using bad words, I'll leave it up there. Because I model it for my kids. I'm like, guys, you're going to be trolled. Don't be like, F you, and just write back. Like, you lose. As soon as you call them a name, you lose. So just present what they're saying. And so if they're respectful enough, then I'll give it back to them, and 99% of them, they disappear. It's like, and I show the kids, and I'm like, well, where did he go? Oh, it's interesting. So this is something, if you're an educator or a parent, I advise taking a picture of this, and then you can Google and find it yourself. These are two great sources of the quick infographics. Obviously, you can read volumes on this stuff. But the great late Carl Sagan, rest in peace. He didn't call it, like, fake news wasn't really a term back then in the 70s. So he just had it where, like, 9 questions to know that if you're dealing with nonsense or not. I think he used the word nonsense. And so Curiosity.com and ASAP Science, they kind of reworded his stuff a little bit and turned into these, like, 9 tricks, let's call it, to avoid fake news. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one to point up, the little pink one with the light bulb, don't get attached to your own hypothesis. All of us have our own biases. We have our own outlook on life, and perception is everything. We don't have all the answers, none of us here. So it's like, if you're looking for something, you're like, what's your own little propaganda going in your mind? What are we thinking when we look for it? And I had to let go of that. As I got more and more this education in science, I was that person. Oh, it's like this because it's the first way I learned it. And then it's liberating. It's so liberating once you just let go. Like the evidence is there. Like I used to avoid Diet Coke like the plague because aspartame and saccharin is so bad. And then I was presented with research. It's like 100 times the dosage to a lab rat. Of course the lab rat's gonna get a tumor. What do you expect? But if you have a Diet Coke once in a while, you're fine. So like I changed my personal behaviors based on the best research that's out there. I find it liberating. Debate no evidence. I mean, I can go on, but you get an idea. The one on the right, and this is awesome because we're in the library, is from the International Federation of Library Associations. I can't remember this, so I have to like read it. They put this out a little bit ago, and it's similar. How to spot fake news, consider the source, check the author. I mean, great stuff. So if you need a quick infographic for a student, a child, or someone is trolling you online, you can just like, hey, did you go through all these things? And it's really for ourselves too. Like I have to stop and catch myself sometimes if I'm getting emotional. Like we gotta be like Spock, man. It's like we gotta be like Spock with this stuff because then we lose once we get like a Captain Kirk. It's like we lose. Once we get Kirk on it, we lose. And so it's like another one while your cameras are out because we're almost wrapping up and we'll end it with some Q&A. But here's some other great sources that myself and Lupe found. The first two they're like those little bit.lys, there's little short links, so that's a shorter version of a full-blown lesson plan from PBS NewsHour and from KQED on, it's designed for teachers, you know, I guess as a parent you could use it too, like, I have a lesson for you, son, you know, but it's a lesson plan, like a full-blown lesson plan. I've yet to use it myself, but I'm definitely going to use it this coming year that I go full in. And with your high school kids, it'd be great. And we can like swap stories, like how did it work for you? Da, da, da. But it's specifically, and it's just practice. It's not just like, kids, this is the tricks you do and you'll be fine. They'll show pictures, they'll show stuff, and like, what do you think, real or not? They'll show, and like, there's an actual practice to it. How awesome is that? So like, none of us want to be fooled. And these are longer links, so it helps to take a picture, but there's 3 more sources. Actually, Luke, you pulled them. Are they articles? They're not lesson
So
plans.
Google has a whole series on applied digital skills, and so they start with testing credibility and knowing how to fact check, because it's easy for us to say, well, check the source or who is it coming from, but as our students, they don't know that. Like we can discern that information a little bit more. So these have videos and exercises for students to be able to figure that out. But I just wanted to go back to the earlier Fukushima picture. I actually showed that to my students, and I was very excited that one of my students, who is a student with special needs, was able to ask a question and say, well, wouldn't that just be due to a mutation? And mutations are random, and they're not necessarily harmful. And so that was a very proud moment of mine because again, the standards are written for all students, regardless of whether they have a disability or not. But also it showed me that this is working, if they're able to, you know, when presented with this, they're thinking a little bit more about it. Some of them were able to identify it wasn't in this picture, but if you go to the story, there's a really long link of the source. And the students were able to identify, like, it was very long, it was kind of nonsensical the way that it was written. Some of them were able to say, well, it doesn't say .org or .edu, so you can't trust it as much. And that's a great tool that they know, but I also said, well, how do you know what the org is? Because any org can push that out. So just saying .org doesn't necessarily mean that you should trust it. So these, especially the Google Applied Digital Skills is one of my favorite ones because it even has the students write a fake news article just so that they can go through the process of,
write a fake news?
Yes, they can write a fake news. So, and see, like, you know, and then they test each other, well, how do you know that this is fake?
Wow, cool. I mean, that's where we're going. Anything else in the News ELA or the Common Sense Media?
Common Sense Media is just a great tool. There's like, it's a family tool and an educator tool as well. So they also, not only do they do articles on this, but they kind of fact check through different types of sources. News ELA is a site. A lot of teachers have students do current event reports. Some of you might remember doing those. And so this one helps to write it in sort of like a user-friendly language or student-friendly language, but they themselves go through a very review process, and they also have links to how you can review and the sources yourself.
Well, before Q&A, we have if anyone's interested, you can take a picture of this to stay connected. if it's like I said, there's no ads on the YouTube. I do it for free.
What's the next video?
What's going to be this panel in a few
What's
weeks.
the next real video?
I got a few things
Are you
already shot.
debunking?
You put me on the spot. I don't know. I got a few things. I got Old Faithful from like that. I got tricks.
You got nothing.
You got nothing, kid.
You got nothing, kid.
So there's, and I also have like little postcards if anyone's interested I can give. And then Justin, want to speak for your podcast?
Podcast comes soon. It's mental exhaustion. It's pretty much going to be me and my friends talking about pop culture and how we can take it to social situations. And that's about it right there. And I tweet a lot, mostly about wrestling and pop culture. So if you ever want to get into that, Andre the Giant for sure. I'm gonna hit those marks, but yeah.
We're gonna talk a lot about Andre the Giant.
Yeah, I know they're gonna come up a lot. Andre the Giant. I miss that guy. But yeah, please support. Follow me on Twitter.
And then Lupe is on LinkedIn. Any other
If
educators?
you are a person in STEM or any exciting field and want to Skype into my classroom, feel free to.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
And I'll be at every bar in San Diego if you want to grab a drink.
Yeah, he didn't want to put his imprint. He's a little grump sometimes, but he's here. And I couldn't do it without Gary because he's been passively helping me with these videos. He's like, but no, it worked out.
I'm the Palpatine of your channel.
Yeah,
I'm
really sabotaging.
I'm leading his channel towards what I want it to be, slowly but surely.
That's why he has the propaganda.
Yeah, I think he's using propaganda strategies on it.
They're working because I'm getting my way.
Any questions or comments or?
I just wanted to ask about Russia being a common enemy in media throughout, especially for America and its history of film. And I was wondering if you guys see any sort of relationship between that and the news media using Russia as an excuse for all kinds of problems, like we talked earlier, the hacking or whatever, swaying.
Or even the Face app. That's like
Right.
yesterday that news just dropped.
The what now?
The Face app, so the aging thing, everyone's doing it, so that's a Russian company. Like that's for sure real, like it is a Russian company, but what are they doing with it? All kinds of conspiracy theories, who knows?
But yeah, to your point, I think what's happened is there's a lot of laziness with journalism and in the media. Like I can speak as a screenwriter. One of the projects I'm working on last year, we were thinking of what's the villain going to be. We had these story meetings, and the director of the project's like, let's make him Russian. I'm like, this is the 80s? He's like, no, Russians are on the news. And I'm like, dude, no, I'm like, can't we make them something? They could be Americans, they could be, he's like, no, it's like, trust me, people who know Russia, they understand what it is. We don't need to have all this exposition about this person believes in this. It's like, dude, let's just go with Russians. And in the end, they outvoted me because everybody believes the same thing. Like, oh yeah, let's go. No exposition needed, go with Russia. So I think what we're getting in these generic villains is creative, just laziness. It's like, with this hacking, like you called it hacking, but it's interference. It's like, how much did Russia really affect the election? We'll never know, but like, in my opinion, very little. I think we just want to use it as an out just so we can say, oh, we don't like this guy, so let's blame Russia, and we can always use that to fall back on. And like, oh, 2020 comes, if he wins again, who are you going to blame this time?
Chinese.
There you go. It's all the same stuff.
Yes.
I have a question for all the panelists. Do you think memes are the new form of propaganda?
Ooh,
I like that one.
Good question.
You start this one, Justin.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, like they're mostly funny than anything, but some of them can be wrong, and they've gone from being very simplistic, like the kid with the like, yeah, I did it, to this weird moths loving lamps situation. But I think you can spin those in a certain situation. Like I would love to see how this Area 51 thing turned out if everyone actually jumped onto it. But I think it's more of a comedic outlet. But I think in the wrong hands, it could turn into something pretty bad. Like 4chan, you ever take a shot down there? Those can get really, really, really gritty. So like if they don't come to the mainstream, which I don't think they will, and the majority of people who make them are just adults who have no no life after that.
But I have an 11-year-old niece who loves to like make her own memes. I think for kids it's really interesting. It's like a creative expression. It's becoming like a part of their personal narrative. So she'll make memes based off whatever her dad did that day, you know. So it's fascinating to me. Like he mentioned the age. I think it really depends on. There's a generational gap and what it means
And I think you can take it certain ways, like the Pepe the Frog thing, you know? That situation turned to like what, the white supremacist symbol? And like the guy who created it was like, this is not what it was at all. Like I watched it from its rise to its fall, and like just sad that you have to like kill off such a funny meme because someone else like took advantage of it and used it for like a nefarious purpose. But it's all into like the public and the majority of people like using it for the right reasons.
Sorry, sir, you had your hand up for a while.
As someone who is on the outside looking in, because I'm British.
Really? I thought you were faking the accent.
You can never be too sure these days.
No, totally kidding.
A piece of what I would count as American propaganda, and I'm particularly interested in the opinion of the educators on the panel, is the Pledge of Allegiance, and what your opinion on it is, because it is something that from the outside seems to be patriotic, but actually is kind of anti-patriotic, because it's like pledging allegiance.
Is there something like that in England? Is there any pledge to the?
I think not like that. I mean, we might have some
No pleasure.
Lupe, do you want to start with that?
I'm gonna let you
No,
take that one.
I want to hear both of your opinions.
I feel like I need, like she said, I need some thinking time on that one. That was a heavy.
I have mixed feelings. We started off the school year without doing it. When I had my own class in elementary, we did it once a week. I did like every Monday morning.
And at the high school level, we don't do it at all.
Yeah. And then so now with this new principal in new middle school, like about a month or two in, she makes this, it's part of her morning announcements, she does it every morning. I know I won't force a kid to do it. I know that, but I have everyone just like, they just get up and do it. Of course I do it with them, but I feel a little awkward, to be honest. Like it's not that I don't like the flag or America, I'm proud, but it's just the words, some of the language, and you're like I don't know.
Actually, it was kind of embarrassing. Well, I don't know. It depends. Was it embarrassing? Our student at graduation was the only time I heard the Pledge of Allegiance this year, and the student who led it said it wrong.
Oh my God.
So, I think that just speaks to.
I don't even know how it goes anymore.
I don't see it as any different from the national anthem in all things, you know?
But that's more fun because you can sing it. The national anthem I like. If I'm at a ball game, I'm singing it because it's just fun.
I can pledge a song. That happens though, anyway. So, I just think that the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance is like, I don't know. I say it, that's how I wash my hands. I say it every time I wash my hands. So that's how I understand it. So, yeah, that's what I do. There's a lot of things I don't want to tell you, man. That's how I know. I have clean hands, clean hands.
Some people sing happy birthday. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Educational outcomes too in K through 12 is just god awful.
There needs to be a little more. There needs to be a little more balance in academia. Academia does lean left for sure. And some universities have been known to have this little kind of, their little, I don't know, it's not a buddy system. What do you call it? Their little club where if two professors are going for the same position and one tends to lean right, one leans left, they're going to go for the one that's like-minded. And I don't think that's healthy. Again, we need diversity, and not just for diversity's sake. You need opposing thoughts, because the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. That's my own thoughts and feelings, but I don't like extremity of either kind. And there is some of that. But the good thing about, at least with science, is that there could be some bias, but eventually the truth will come out. Or it won't work. This computer, that monitor, these lights would not work, simply put, because the proof is in the pudding. That's why science is my favorite subject. It's like, oh my God. But when you get into history and other areas, it's like who's telling the story? What's their angle? It gets a little.
There's a really great Neil deGrasse Tyson video that you can watch where he talks about how 40% of all scientists in America are believers of some sort of faith in Christianity. And so I think that actually what you just said, my last presentation that I give was on science and religion, actually. So. I think it's a big misconception. It's something that the media likes to push out, that if you're a scientist, you have to be atheists, but I think if you look for the information, you'll actually find. He mentioned his Catholic guilt earlier. I gave this talk at a Catholic church, and there are a lot of Catholics who thought that the church was against evolution, and the church is not against evolution. And the current pope is really pushing what he calls ecological ethics, which is, as humanity, we really need to take care of the environment. And so I can only speak to that as an expert, but if you look, there are many people of faith who are scientists, so I think that's just another example of propaganda that you you can't have a faith if you're a scientist.
Everything has to be black and white,
Yes.
not gray, but everything is gray.
How librarians, especially in the public sector, can actually help with this work from your point of view.
I think first we need to get kids into libraries. I think that's one of the issues right now is that YouTube is their main source of information.
Wikipedia.
So I think, if there's ways that we can encourage or promote students coming in.
How does Alliance do it?
So we do a lot of things internally. So Alliance is the largest charter network throughout LA. And so a lot of what we do is in-house. So we don't have as many connections with libraries because our students are kind of all over. But something that we tried doing a couple years ago, this was a colleague of mine, was we actually did try, we have like advisory, which is like homeroom. So during our advisory time, we would try to make trips, taking turns to our library. But the librarians, unfortunately, were a little hands off. So I think, we definitely need to work on establishing partnerships.
Libraries go out
Yes.
and do outreach at the schools, and I know Alliance doesn't have any librarians. You guys have like classroom libraries maybe? But yeah, that's a great example though. If Alliance would reach out to the public library, there could be a partnership, and then we could come and teach these fake news things, which is, part of our job description.
Yeah, and the library was super helpful during the solar eclipse a couple of years ago, because that was during the time we were doing that, and so we walked our kids over, and we all watched the eclipse together. And definitely, it's just inconsistent. I would say it's inconsistent. It really depends on the year, the goal, the agenda, right? So, but I agree, that's something that we need to do more of.
Well, I mean, every middle school and high school has their own library, but as far as working with the public library, not much that I've seen. I'm also new to a middle school. I was teaching 6th grade at an elementary school. And so that was just a small, pitiful, sad library at the elementary school. And then I just finished my first year in middle school. So it's a bigger, better library. But as far as outreach to the public library system, because Glendale is a big enough city to have its own everything, police and fire and library. But it's a good question. It's something I want to pose as well. But she's right, get the kids in there, because they're just, or it's more like a phone or a tablet.
And I think that's sort of the thing. When I was growing up, my main reason for going to the library was to use a computer, because I didn't have one at home. And now, because they have everything at their hands, it seems like it's too much of an effort to walk 2 blocks to the library.
I would love to see the library represented in the future, but I think it's telling how little even teachers utilize the public library as a free resource that you actually pay for with your taxes. And we have an enormous amount of reliable and accurate information available through our system, and you can use most library systems remotely from your own device now. And we offer such robust databases and research opportunities. And it's interesting that you're using Google Scholar, considering how much the library has to offer.
And you can get copies of the actual journals at some library. We're on the same team, so I agree.
I promise to you in this next video we're going to have, instead of using Google Scholar, we're going to talk more about the library. That is important.
Oh, and we're at a library. I was happy to find that infographic from the library. All right, that's all the time we have. Thanks for sticking around,
Thank you
too.
so
I hope
much.
it was interesting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And let's not be fooled by anyone or anything.
Especially me.
I have a postcard that will use information of the YouTube. Speaking of propaganda, YouTube there.